So we'll start recording in just a moment. And while we're hearing from the presenters, if you can keep your microphones off just to cut down the background noise, that'd be good. So any questions you have, put those into the chat box. So we'll pick those up as we come towards the end. But also once we do get to the end, we'll actually ask you to turn your microphones back on so we can have a real conversation with Ashwin rather than all be through text. So just to remind you and us of any questions you have along the way, do put them in the text box, and we'll come to those later on and have an opportunity for you all to have a catch up and a chat with Ashwin. So to begin with, I'll hand over to Sandy. Sandy Webb's our secretary of the Jawbone Friends Group, and she's really how we came to connect with Ashwin. Sandy's had some previous interaction with him through work she's done in India. So we'll start with Sandy. If you can just talk to us briefly about how we came to this point now where we're online talking about cats.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, does that look good?
That's fantastic.
Okay, now right over here is our cat. That's Boris sitting on my pond, okay? But I'm just taken by how remarkably similar he is to this very beautiful fishing cat here that Ashwin sent through. And so that's my starting point. And we're really delighted to be hearing from Ashwin today about fishing cats and mangroves. Okay, Ashwin really going to talk to us today about his work with the organisation he's set up called Fishing Cat Conservancy, and we're looking forward to that. And as David said, we're very proud, and this is the Jawbone Marine Sanctuary seen from the air. And just in the distance over here, if we could just peep around a bit further to the left, you would actually see the city of Melbourne. Now, that's a city of 5 million people, and it's only about 8 kilometres from here. But in this beautiful little bay and around the edges here, we actually have a stand of mangroves that are growing on basalt. And they're very precious and beautiful wetlands in here where we've got migratory birds that come from the far northern hemisphere in the summer months down here. Very precious wetlands, seagrasses and mangroves in here. And we are very proud to have them and to be in charge of really helping to protect them in the Jawbone Marine Sanctuary Care Group. But also we find that they make a most amazing educational facility for us. And we're starting to do more and more. And that's why this talk with Ashwin is so important to us. It's really, we feel it's extending our knowledge about the importance of this coastal ecosystem and other people's work that can guide us and inspire us along the way in our Jawbone group. Now I want to tell you a little bit about meeting Ashwin. I met him in 2007 in a very beautiful national park, Bandhavgarh National Park in India in 2007. And I was there with friends on a mad sort of project that I'd taken up, inspired at first by one of the resorts there that offered an incentive to come and stay with them for people who had a project that would involve the local community. Because in India, in Bandhavgarh in particular, there are very, very beautiful tigers, but they're critically endangered, mainly through poaching and habitat loss. And the tourists who come, like us, would love to see the tigers, and they're beautiful, majestic creatures. But what you find is as they're being so poached, heavily poached, you find that because the local community needs to be involved in their conservation, and without that involvement and taking the community along with you, conservation efforts are quite doomed. So the resort offered this incentive for people to come. And I dreamed up this idea with support of a couple of Australian friends who are here, Jenny and Wendy, I think are in the audience. Here we are on the back of an elephant going on a tiger safari. But what we'd realised was that tourists like us didn't only want to see tigers as much as we adored that. We actually were interested in so many things about Bandhavgarh National Park that were hurried past. And so we dreamed up this plan that we'd run a series of workshops for the field guides to introduce them to some other things that it was that tourists like us would like to be shown and learn more about. And so we dreamt up this workshop for the field guides, and the director of the park supported us in it. And the woman who ran the resort also offered us some accommodation and some food for the people who came for the course. And what we dreamed up was probably 5 sessions where we're going to introduce them to things like the importance of conservation, to helping tourists learn more about the vegetation. I, at that time, was mad about trees, and really setting up good bird watching capacity for people on the back of an elephant or in the back of a little four-wheel drive or a Jeep, that we also wanted to know more about birds. And so we set up this project, and along came, I had invited to help 2 young academics from a university in Hyderabad. And lo and behold, along with them came this young man. This is Ashwin here. Ashwin turned up as a wild card, really. We didn't know he was coming. Here he is here. But he came along supporting the academics, and came full of bundling enthusiasm and knowledge. And the session he ran for the field guides was just a knockout success. We had the guides came in their lunch hours and sat down on the ground. We ran these workshop sessions. That's me probably talking about how to use a key to identify trees. Wendy, my friend, who's in the audience over here, standing on the side. Here's Ashwin on the side. I think this is, and Wendy talking here, but Ashwin's session was, among the other things he did was play a lot of bird sounds and had the field guides guessing, whether they could identify the birds from the sound. They had a great amount of fun. Anyway, but in that week when Ashwin was there, we had an amazing time with him out in the field, looking at tiger footprints, wandering down paths, looking at probably droppings, and it was it's fairly alarming being in the middle of a jungle with tiger footprints on the ground. But Ashwin and his cohorts, it always remained academically interesting as well. I learned a lot from him that day. And so now Ashwin has a PhD in conservation biology from the University of Arizona. And as you probably saw in the publicity, he has founded the Fishing Cat Conservancy, and he'll tell us a lot more about it. And a lot of what it does is empowering local people, as that very idea from that course that we ran. The local people do need to be empowered in conservation efforts. And this is now the topic that Ashwin's going to address us now, working to protect and restore mangroves, one of the world's most valuable ecosystems. And I'll launch you off into Ashwin's talk with great excitement, with just showing you a photo of the white mangroves in our Jawbone Marine Sanctuary. Thanks very much, and welcome, Ashwin.
No sound.
Okay.
That's it. We got you now.
Hey, that was one amazing introduction, Sandy. Thank you so much. I couldn't be more honored than this, but I do remember, if we go back to that time, I think what's surprising is that now that I think back to it, that was my first conservation talk ever. Wow. I think that kicked it off right there. So yeah. Quite a journey it's been. So almost 15 years now. And I think what you don't realize is the fact that the amount of inspiration that you brought in with you sort of influenced a lot of the local people and the community there, going, okay, wow, look at people from Australia coming in all the way, and then talking to us about our own wildlife. It just blows people's minds, and that kind of got a cycle going. And it was always in my head that we had to do something on the lines of education and awareness, and more importantly, empowering people to become proud about their backyards and wildlife. And that just manifested itself into over the 15 years into what's compounded now into Fishing Cat Conservancy. I'm excited to share what I have. We'll keep that theme in mind. So I love the indigenous people concept that David talked about with Jawbone. Let's focus on the education and awareness part that Sandy talked about. And now let's dive into how Fishing Cat Conservancy was formed, combining all of these ideas. So I'm going to share my presentation here. Can you all see the cat?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So that's the Fishing Cat. This one was photographed by conservation photographer Anjani, who we met about 5 years after we were established. And then through our 5 years of formation, we met several amazing conservationists, many of whom reminded me of my time with you, Sandy. And I always wanted to take the opportunity to encourage people to pursue conservation as a career, because that's what I was attempting to do at that time. And it was very hard. It was very hard to pursue a conservation career. Because it's not really a job, it's not, conservation is not viewed as a job. But then there's all this exciting wildlife that's out there. And I'll talk you through the story of fishing cats simultaneously. So what fascinated me after I did my PhD on mountain lions and bobcats in Arizona, but what fascinated me about fishing cats is they were endangered. Very few studies were on them. I mean, nobody knew, or there wasn't a lot published on these cats. So we wanted to learn more. Fishing cats, the name comes because of their affinity to water, and they live in the wetlands of South and mangroves of South and Southeast Asia, but they don't just eat fish. This one, I don't know if you can see the photo, but it has a dog-faced water snake in its mouth. This is the range of the fishing cats we learned, at least from our initial research, and there are still many areas that these cats are present, but they haven't been mapped thoroughly. So IUCN says vulnerable, but it truly should say data deficient, because there's so much we is yet to learn about fishing cats as a species. I mean, not nearly, I don't know, as much as we know about tigers and all the big cats. Small cats, we have very little knowledge about. But what was amazing about the fishing cats is that they lived in mangroves. And all these years I've been looking, okay, tigers, fantastic, charismatic species. I mean, you look at organizations like WWF, they've capitalized on the idea of a flagship species like the panda. I was thinking, why can't we use fishing cats as a flagship species for mangroves? So, of course, there are mangroves throughout the world, and fishing cats do not exist in all of those mangroves. They only range in South and Southeast Asia. But when I delve deeper into the idea of conserving a species, it's really all linked to us human beings living next to these species in their habitats and the habitats themselves. So how do we protect entire ecosystems, right? It's got to be some exciting aspect of mangroves. Of course, mangroves are exciting. Of course, wetlands in general are exciting. They're amazing ecosystems. You find that they're incredible carbon sinks. I mean, protecting an acre of mangroves is like protecting 5 or more acres of tropical forest, because the amount of carbon they sequester is 5 or more times that of an upland forest. And the biodiversity is just incredibly diverse, and you find a lot of endangered species in mangroves. And humans are dependent on mangroves. Primarily, if you look at natural disasters like tsunamis, mangroves are the first line of defense between human communities and tsunamis, and so they're like protectors of coastlines. And they're also home to, like I said, the endangered species. In this picture, you see smooth-coated otters, and here's a Indian jackal. You also have many sea turtles along the sandy beaches, not too far away from these mangroves. Again, endangered, critically endangered, vulnerable, you name it. They're all out there. What fascinated us the most was the fact that humans were directly dependent on mangrove ecosystems for their survival. I mean, look at this. This is a village in India surrounded by mangroves. And, on the right, you could see this intact mangrove forest that's actually protected by the forest department. In India, it's declared as a reserve forest, so there's some level of protection it receives. But to the northwest, you see these, large clearings of fish and shrimp farms. So what's threatening mangroves is this right here. Widespread fish and shrimp farming that has probably decimated a little over half the mangrove cover in South and Southeast Asia. And that's because of the global demand for fish and shrimp. I don't know about Australia, but if you go to the US, any grocery store, you pick up a package of fish or shrimp or crab, particularly fish and shrimp, the label usually says farm raised in Thailand, farm raised in Indonesia, Malaysia, all in Sri Lanka, India, all Southeast Asian countries. And so that's a huge problem. Seafood, it's funny, over 90% of the seafood imported consumed in the US is imported. And that just blows my mind. But it really doesn't blow my mind, because on the ground, if you look at it, people live because of fish and shrimp farming. It's their livelihood. A lot of people are directly involved in coastal communities per se. They want to make their farm because they want to protect their livelihood. But the sad part about fish and shrimp farming is it's not sustainable. The first few years, farms are very productive, but after that, productivity wears off because, stuff gets accumulated in these ponds. And this is what people do to maintain these ponds. I mean, this is like the biggest pollution problem when it comes to coastal aquaculture. Dumping of chemicals into the natural streams and ecosystems surrounding these farms, because those farms, they accumulate these chemicals over time, and in order to maintain the productivity levels, they've got to dump all the bad water out and then put fresh water in. And this over time has led to a lot of native fishery die-off, and that's caused a lot of the fringe farmers and the fringe fishermen to lose their daily catch. It's not too different from a kind of like a food crisis in many ways. What you also see is, there are many areas where mangroves are just mangroves, but in India, if you go into some of these locations, I mean, this is kind of the scene in many places in South and Southeast Asia. People are just right next to these mangroves, and they're protected in many ways because people really can't do much in mangroves, but also because there's some sort of regulation protecting from the deforestation of mangroves. But ideally, people would just want to just go, make fish and shrimp farms. In the coastal communities, this is a little bit better. If you see some of the villages, these are kind of like hamlets, fishing hamlets as they're called. People go out, they catch fish, they come back, they auction it off on the beach, and then people just buy stuff. And, it's semi-sustainable, but we don't know. I mean, you go down and see some of the species that are caught in these boats. It's incredible. Especially you divers. Oh my God. Sandy was planning a trip to India. My thing would be to show you all these crazy species that are caught by fishermen. Maybe some of these fish and marine species have yet to be discovered. That's how crazy it is. But here's the thing: people have to live, and they do it because they want to feed their families and they want to support their livelihoods. So fish, shrimp, crabs, these are all livelihood matters. And these ecosystems provide these mechanisms for people's livelihoods. However, there's a question of sustainability, as we talked about. With aquaculture farms, we go back to the quote. I don't know if Mahatma Gandhi said this. There's enough in the world for everyone's need, but not enough in the world for everyone's greed. So we have to do something about the rampant aquaculture problem. So what did we do? In the last 5 years, we discovered fishing cats in many of these areas, and we were able to get people excited about fishing cats. I'm not here to talk about that today because, you can watch the TED Talk, or you can watch other things that we've done in the past on our social media channels to see, yeah, fishing cats are cool, they're exciting, but how do they provide for people's livelihoods? So we had to come up with a better solution. Or rather, we still haven't solved the problem yet. How can we create a system where nature provides for jobs? How can we create a system where we can get people to embrace nature conservation as a lucrative career? How can we get somebody to think that, hey, guess what? I make money because of a forest on my land. If I lose this forest, I lose everything. That's the kind of thing we want to get to, because that is what over and over again came to us at the end of, we were trying everything. We were trying to set cameras and detect fishing cats. And then people are like, oh yeah, this is great. But how am I going to sustain this hobby? The thing that bugged me most throughout my career was conservation is a rich person's profession. There was a great article published in Manga Bay or something like that. You should look that up. It's called Conservation is a Rich Person's Profession. And that just killed me from the inside. And of course, it was killing me too. I didn't start Fishing Cat Conservancy just like that. I went into a debt of $30,000. I'm not even kidding you. I want to state these numbers because they're true. But I still find the problem is worth solving. So then we looked in and found, okay, fine, there's these excellent national park systems that are working out there. How do we sort of mimic that? There are these lodges, like Sandy talked about in Bandhavgarh. There's this lodge that's operating. Now, that's a for-profit model. What if businesses could embrace an idea that would employ people for conservation? That gives them a job for life. So then off late, we said, okay, we're going to have to pivot into something that provides people with sustainable livelihoods. And so we created the idea of a nature reserve. So with FishCat Nature Reserve, which is it was a product of a 6-year, I don't know what you'd call it, but a turmoil of failed experiments. It's a series of, when you fail over 6 years and you realize nothing's working out, all these failures add up to something, right? And that's something. This is still a failure in progress, is what I like to say, because unless it's a true success that goes on, it really is a string of failures. So here's our next failure plan, right? Or rather, hopefully to be successful plan. The idea for us is, okay, what if we could get people or incent the process of restoration and reforestation? The idea here is, if we had a mangrove forest, it would provide fish, shrimp, and crab, albeit at a low level of produce, a sustainable livelihood, because mangroves don't need to be pumped with chemicals. Mangroves don't need to be maintained very heavily. Although, yes, there is a bit of a problem when mangroves are small. Maybe they can get eaten by cattle or livestock. But the idea is, if you have a mangrove forest, it will produce. If you have a forest in general, there are forest products that you can harvest from forests. It could be honey, it could be wood, it could be basic fundamental nature's products that can be harvested for a livelihood and marketed even in the local economy. So that's what we want to do, is to try to create the circular economy. And over here you see, sorry, I had to go back there. This is Venkat and this is Ramakrishna. These are two folks who were aquaculture farmers, and they're actually now planting mangroves and trying to protect mangroves on their very own lands to see whether, they can harvest mangrove crabs sustainably and market them to the local economy. What I told you about Venkat and Ramakrishna is that they are our current contracts. They're in progress. We are incentivizing them with a contract to be able to get them to a sustainable livelihood based off of mangroves. The only success we've had in the past so far after so many experiments is this guy, Moshi. Moshi is a poacher. He supports a family of 30 people, believe it or not. He's a tribal poacher. He used to hunt fishing cats. And after we met him, he stopped poaching and he picked on conservation and agriculture. And guess what? He is completely converted into a conservationist right now. His livelihood is paid for partly by conservation, partly by agriculture that he is doing. And because of his poaching history, or rather hunting history, he has all this incredible knowledge. He knows how valuable these ecosystems are, because if you look at it, these animals were a product of the forest. And so he says, well, what we were doing is not sustainable, but now I have hope that, our tribal history was dependent on forests. And now I have hope that by doing conservation, we will revive this traditional ecological livelihood. This is indigenous knowledge combined with conservation science. This is the way forward, is what we think, the synergy that is created between a product of indigenous knowledge with a product of modern science. This is Moshi. And believe it or not, our latest Earth Camp, where the Big Cat Sanctuary from the UK flew in, and I think as we speak, we should have had Jawbone out there. I hope Jawbone will come out next year after the pandemic to experience this, because literally because of your presence, conservation gets driven 10x forward. It's because people take pride in their backyards. People take pride in their own lands. And hey, guess what? I have an endangered species right here in my own land. I have a wealth of natural resources in my own property. I wish, we could make that a generational livelihood thing without disturbing the local ecosystem in any way, right? So then we said, okay, fine. How can we take this income, or rather livelihood, to local people one step further? We said, well, they get income from sustainably harvested fish, shrimp, and crab, and they get income from our incentive contracts, which is basically, an organization like us coming in and saying, hey, we'll support you for nature conservation, but not indefinitely. The idea is to see you sustain to a forest-based livelihood. The third thing we said, okay, well, lodges are out there. They're for-profit companies that are out there setting up lodges, and ecotourism is a big deal. How do we put a bend and a twist to this to make it carbon negative, right? So we set up Earth Camp, and the idea with Earth Camp is it's a zero waste camping idea where we source local materials, we build a very low footprint campsite, and we invite and host people, which hopefully Jawbone will come to one of these Earth Camps next year or whenever post-pandemic, to reforest or accelerate the reforestation of that area, or accelerate the sustainability of that area. And those are what you see on the right, mangrove saplings that were planted when Big Cat Sanctuary came out in January. We removed, believe it or not, 10 acres of trash, plastic trash that was brought in from the ocean and left around by people. And our idea is, what can we build with this plastic trash, right? What can we do with this plastic trash that can send a message to the world saying, hey, guess what? Trash is not really trash. It can be turned into a circular economy that can send a message to completely, eliminate the use of single-use plastics. And then finally, how can we get our youth involved in conservation? So youth chooses more of conservation jobs rather than jobs that add to the carbon footprint of humanity. How can we make people go carbon negative? So we're picking every age from 18 to 80 or whatever it is, from 1 to 100. Everyone needs to get involved in conservation. And there is an opportunity for everybody to do conservation. It's just that we have to find and add the word sustainability to it. Not just ecological sustainability, but economic sustainability. And that's super important. Every time we started a conservation project, we ran out of money. That's bad. I mean, I've heard that US charities have done more harm than good by giving away free stuff in underdeveloped and developing nations. We want to be able to invest in conservation. How do we create a circular economy? That is what it's all about. How do we sustain conservation? And so here's an economic delta, a small part of the economy, right? We signed a lease with the local villagers to lease out that nature reserve, and that's we input money into the system, and the lease agreement says that this place is supposed to be restored and reforested into a nature reserve that will provide for jobs to the local people and to 2 villages. So we're talking 2,000 families will be supported with this nature reserve. And guess what? Fishing cats and all these amazing species will then automatically be protected. It's like the corporates do it. They say, take care of the customer and the business will take care of itself. That's what we want to do, is how do we create these relationships that will last forever. So hopefully this sort of connects back to the idea that Sandy invested in me when I was a kid, and I'm trying to do this, pass on the favor by hopefully helping create 1,000 jobs in conservation. We've created 20 jobs, and the idea is hopefully we can establish 1,000 nature reserves, protect more than 1 million acres of mangroves, and offset the carbon footprint of 10 million people for lifetimes and generations to come. So with that said, Fishing Cat Conservancy is moving towards building solutions where you get to see your mangrove grow on the ground. We want to build systems for full transparency, where if you invest in FishCat, you get a location assigned to you, and that location will be standing as a forest for lifetimes and generations to come, not only offsetting your carbon footprint, but providing a carbon negative livelihood to the family that runs that location, and offsetting your entire family's and generations' carbon footprints for many years to come. So it's kind of like a gift that keeps on giving, right? To further enhance the transparency idea, I don't know if you guys have cell phones, but take a moment, lift up your cell phones, open a camera mode or whatever, the QR code mode. I'll give you a second here. See if you can scan our latest merchandise idea. And this is just, again, a beta test, maybe another failure about to happen. But maybe one of you can speak here and tell me if you're able to scan that code and see what happens.
I've got it. Yes, it's working. I've got it. You Cat Nature Reserve now.
Great. Fantastic. So it takes you to, and this code literally is pointing to the location where that mangrove sapling was growing. That's all I have, folks. There's a lot published about our blueprint online. I wanted to highlight at the bottom, Australia Broadcasting Company did a really cool podcast. It's on our website. It's called The Search for the Fishing Cat. And if you have great speakers or headphones, definitely listen to that podcast. Of course, the TED Talks online. And if you are on any of the social media channels, do check us out. All what I've said is on there. And we'd love for you to join us in our mission to protect and restore the world's most valuable ecosystems. Thank you all very, very much.
That's been fantastic, Ashwin. Thanks very much for your time this morning and to talk through what you're doing with the FishCat Conservancy, because it really is an extraordinary effort, just really driven by you and your passion for looking after the mangroves and everything around it. I'll just point out quickly before we go into questions, we did ask for a fee this morning for people to join the event, and that's really because all the money that comes into this goes to the FishCat Conservancy. So everybody today has made a small donation to the work you're doing, Ashwin, which is fantastic to be able to be part of that. So I've got no questions that have come through on the Zoom, the chat at the moment, but we'll open it up now to anybody who has got questions. I do have one around the cats themselves. I want to understand, what are most cats don't like water and they don't tend to go into water. What are the adaptations that a fishing cat has that makes it able to and happy to spend time in the water?
Yeah, that's a great question. What we've read and seen in some cases is that they have partially webbed feet, and then they have partially retractable claws. And if you watch them in zoos, I think Taronga Zoo has fishing cats in Australia. You can see them dive, and then their coat is really thick and water repellent. One amazing thing that we noticed with fishing cats is they'll go into water, catch a fish, and they'll come out. They won't shake their coat or do anything like that. They'll just walk. And
wow.
it almost seems like the water they don't care about the water. And they really don't. If you look at them, they really don't care about the water. They don't feel like, how you would expect a cat to react. Oh, yuck. Fishing cats, you will not see that. They love water. How do you call that? Hydrophilic.
Yeah, that's one. Yeah. Not hydrophobic. So has anybody else got any questions this morning for Ashwin and around mangroves and the work he's doing? Sandy, you got your hand up there. So there is a function, Andrew, can you explain that quickly about how you raise your hand using Zoom so that we can manage the questions as they come up, because I'm sure there'll be a few, so rather than everyone jumping at once, we'll start with Sandy's question. But,
yeah, mine's more something that's just been triggered in my mind by what Ashwin said, and that sustainability has both that economic side to it as well as the environmental side. And I suppose I've been guilty quite often of just thinking in the environmental terms and then scoffing at certain political persuasions that seem to put too much emphasis on the economy. So I've been pulled up short and realised that I have to actually bring into my thinking a lot more of what Ashwin was talking about, how you have to incentivise with some financial security, at least for the people to start off with. And I suppose I'm just wondering, how you're doing most of your fundraising, Ashwin, and how well it's going for your sustainability as an organisation to keep things moving forward, I suppose, getting more and more local people that you can support economically while the transition is made. How are you doing that?
That's a fantastic question, Sandy. Fundraising has been a major challenge, and I just sort of dived into the nonprofit world without thinking about fundraising, and that kicked me. Let me track back. Disney Fund gave us a seed grant, right? We were funded first 2 years with Disney Conservation Fund. Mostly, that was a big one. And then, of course, a lot of our investors and partners joined together, individual contributions that were made over the first few years. And then we realized that there's no guarantee that people are going to continue to support an organization forever. It's not like a lifetime thing. So I had to read a lot of books, and I still am reading about financial sustainability, educating myself on financial sustainability, and that's really important. And so we stopped doing grants, because one of the things with grants is there's no guarantee. If you employ people on a grant and the funding runs out, you're done after that. Basically, you really want to do more work, but then you don't have any money, and it's like, oh my God, what do you do? So then we realized
the best way to create a financial system is to build long-term relationships. If you, like, for example, one of our investors, like, okay, I'm going to guarantee I will invest, let's say, for example, $10 a month for the next 10 years. I will invest $100 a year for the next, 100 years. Or there's got to be that. And then we said, okay, why don't we move from organizational grants to organizational partnerships? Because with a partnership, what comes is a commitment, right? We're committed to doing conservation, but the partner is also committed to funding that work for a long period of time until we see a transition to forest-based livelihoods. There's got to be a commitment that's made, and so it's a two-way relationship. And then we started focusing on individual long-term relationships. That is what is working for us right now. Is people who've been with us over the last 5-6 years, individuals. There are some individuals who have said, you know what, I'm going to make a lifetime commitment. I'm going to make a legacy commitment. So we said, let's establish let's establish FishCat as a legacy fund. So we called it the Tsunami Legacy Fund. I mean, it's a fund literally that even if a tsunami hits the coastline, the fund will remain in place to build back livelihoods for the people living in these ecosystems, right? It's got to be able to sustain even a tsunami. And so we've had, for example, Larry Thompson, he's one of our investors. He said he just wrote off, he's close to 70 or 80 right now, and he 67 or 80, and he's written off in his will, said, I'm 40% of my net worth, which is over $250,000, going into the Tsunami Legacy Fund. I myself have pledged 100% of my wealth, whatever comes in, I'm going to just put it in that fund. I mean, if I kick the bucket tomorrow, I want FishCat to survive protecting these ecosystems that we've committed to protect and restore, right? What's the point of going through life and then basically, we all live, and then there's not, what do we leave behind, right? Are we leaving behind are we being carbon negative, right? So first of all, obviously, I want to make that point to everybody who's investing is when we receive an investment from you, we want to keep in touch with you for life. And if something happens to you, we'll keep in touch with your family, so we want to be able to maintain that long-term perspective. And it's okay. We've had people drop off, but now it's not that bad because we have 150 plus supporters. We do have 5 people drop off here and 5 people join us, but it's still a growing, sustainable pot of money that is functioning, to employ all these people sustainably, right? So that's financial sustainability. And then we also want to move to redefine philanthropy in a way that, how are capitalistic organizations and companies, how is Google, Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, all these companies are doing amazing because they've got corporate structure in place that's so competitive, right? I want nonprofits, and with Fishing Cat Conservancy, we're striving every day to come to basically surpass that corporate level dedication. How do we build an organization that's actually working? Not in a way to say that, hey, we're mistreating. We want to be emotionally intelligent. How do we create a win-win-win for everybody involved in this ecosystem, right? That's the key part. In the value chain, everybody must win. There is no zero sum. Nobody's one person winning and one person losing does not work. It's not sustainable. Aquaculture is not going to be sustainable because the ecosystem is losing. You can't have one party lose and another party win. It's got to be a win-win-win all around. And unless an organization strives to achieve that, it's not going to sustain. So we are absolutely focused on that right now. How do we create a value chain that provides at least whatever part of the economy that we are, everybody wins in that economy?
Brilliant. Thanks, Ashwin. Just a couple of questions that come through the chat. The first one is quite an intriguing one. What do the poachers do with the cats once they catch them? I can't imagine being sold as kittens or anything like that, or household cats. What do poachers do with the cats?
From what we've learned, they sell them. They sell them to circuses. They sell them to the mafia. They sell them to it's a money making mechanism. If it doesn't provide for a livelihood, why would people do it? Like, if you look at the mafia in South and Southeast Asia, you look at all that National Geographic data on illegal wildlife trade being exported out of Southeast Asia to the developed nations, US or China, UK. I think even Australia is among the top importers of exotic species, right?
Yeah.
Why are exotic species in business?
Yeah, anything we haven't got.
Yeah, it's because there's an economy that's fueling that, and we got to change that. What if we could take the people who are doing that and say, hey, guess what? A forest in your land will give you more money and provide your family with a better, more enriched, more a beautiful life. That attraction has to be there. I mean, this iPhone is the most important piece of real estate on the planet. We are glued to this. This is an incentive, right? I mean, how can we make conservation and animals, a part of this, right? So that pull has to be there, and I'm hoping that's going to happen, because we're moving to solar, we're moving to wind. Because it's cheaper, it's better, it's less polluting. It's a win-win-win. Oil and gas, if you guys are invested in oil and gas, it's going down. It's inevitable, and the good will always prevail over the bad over time.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ashwin. Just a quick one too. In the areas you're working in, how many species of mangroves are there?
Excellent question. In India, there are at least 22 to 23 species, which is very diverse. But in of course North America, Mexico, of course, I mean, we're not in the mangroves here, but there's lesser diversity. And I don't know about Australia. I think if you go further where you guys are, I don't think you have 22, 23 species. I think
28.
There's more.
28.
What's that? Oh, you
28.
do? Oh, fantastic. That I did not know that. Thank you so much for that information. But as what I learned is that as you go further up in latitude or further down in latitude, latitude, the number of species diversity decreases. Am I right about that, Hugh?
Yes, there's one here. We only have one in Melbourne. And then as you go north, it increases. There are 3 in Sydney, 5 in Brisbane, and so on. And it increases to the Gulf of Carpentaria, where there are 28.
Fantastic. Yeah. So in our areas that we've worked, there were about 22 to 23 species.
Excellent. We're just hanging over to a question from the attendees, the audience, or whatever we call them.
Shamina has one. Shamina has one.
And Julia had a hand up first, I think. So we'll go to Julie and then Shamima next. So
Hi.
like to come from there, Julie.
Hi, thanks. Hi, Ashwin. It's great to hear about your work, and I think it was really interesting to hear about the different efforts to try and motivate people to donate and philanthropy and a sustainable model there. I'm also interested to hear a bit more about the sort of that other end of it, if you like, around how you're doing community engagement and how you're working to distribute the benefits and the real sort of some of the hard long-term work on the social inclusion aspects. And if you're thinking through, I guess, some of the factors around gender inequality and who's participating and who's benefiting. I'd like
Great
to
point.
hear a bit more about that angle as well.
Great point. I don't know if I skipped that part in the slides, but one of the things that we're focused on, I'll start with the gender inequality part. I think we want to put the money in the women's hands because we're very focused on the idea of women empowerment, and we want to be able to empower more women in conservation. Actually, Destiny and Natalie are here from our team. I wish Destiny could show her video and say hello, but she is leading a part of the idea of bringing women into conservation. in general, we've noticed that women do a much better job than men of handling anything in general. Like, I don't know what it is.
Really?
But, yeah. So we're very pro. So one of the slides was basically the idea that, I think the benefits of conservation should go to the women in the family, especially in South and Southeast Asia, because there's a lot of, it's a very male dominated thing over there. To the point of, we want to take care of everybody we work with. When we started, we were able to support some people for like 6 months. We were able to support some people for maybe 1 year, right? How do we move it to 2 years? So off late, I think our longest job has been for 3 years now. We hit a 3-year mark with one of the guys. His name is Pranav. He basically started out as a field, trainee, and then went on to become our program manager for India. And we were able to support him continuously for 3 years. And then we had a couple other people and then he started his own nonprofit in India, right? He's actually running his own organization right now because now he's like, yeah, I get it. I understand the system. I can do my own thing right now. Fantastic. How can we get people from by the way, he was working for a software company that was paying him twice the amount that we were paying him with conservation, right? And then we were able to develop it, and now he started his own conservation organization that is kind of paying for his bills, right? Same thing with Venkat, the family. I don't know if you saw the photo, but his family is what we're trying to take care of. We've set up the incentive contracts such that they're quarterly incentive contracts, and it doesn't pay for all of his bills, but it's an additional source of income to transition his farm from an aquaculture pond to a mangrove farm, right? And the mangroves are just starting to grow. This is just adjacent to the nature reserve area that I showed you, exactly where the QR code scanned. What we want to be able to do is support Venkat for at least 3 years. We've made a 3-year commitment to Venkat, and we are 1.5 years into supporting incentive contracts with Venkat. And what we want to do is within these 3 years, we want to see him generate an income with mangrove forest. Now, we will commit to at least 3 years, if not 5 years. If you look at our website on top, you'll see our points on sustainability. We want to make a 3 to 5 year commitment with every land partner. And we want to make sure within those 3 years, first 3 years, we want to take care of that land partner to transition that land partner to a forest-based sustainable livelihood. And what I mean by that is they have multiple sources of income. They have they have fish, shrimp, and crab, for example, if it's from mangroves. We're trying to see if they can even do apiculture, honey harvest. That's a big thing in Senegal. People have done, honey harvest from mangroves. And then we want to provide them with carbon offset incentives, which is essentially our investor base, right? Like you and I and all of us here who are, investing in FishCat. That money, a portion of that is going to go into one of the contracts that is going to support Venkat. And then the final thing is the Earth Camp and Nature Reserve. If these 3 or 4 sources of income, these streams, imagine if you provide 4 streams of income to a person like Venkat, who's a land farmer, a land partner. That partner has sustainability, and that's what we want to do, is to create multiple sources of income for every partner that we make, and we want to make a 3 to 5 year commitment.
Okay, thanks for that, Ashwin. Time for a couple more questions. So we'll go to Shamima next, and then to Kate Bulling, I think, who has another question. So Shamima, if you'd like to jump in there and fire away with your question.
Thanks. Hi, Ashwin. I'm Shamima, and I'm from Sri Lanka originally, and I work in tropical forest research. And one of the issues is that sometimes the pressure is not coming from small villages living around these areas, is it? It's coming from agribusiness, isn't it? I mean, people from the cities with who are simply doing. I've lost Ashwin. Can I don't know why. David, I think you need to pin him.
Ashwin's there still.
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
I can hear Shamima.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. So money is coming from the cities into the areas surrounding both the forests and the mangroves, and these owners are detached from the land. So how are you as an organization coping with that?
That's a great question. So we did operate in Sri Lanka, and we are still operating in Sri Lanka. We have 2 land partners in Sri Lanka that we've collaborated with. In fact, we've seen interest from 5 land partners. Mostly these people are lodge owners, right? So they have a business like Bandhavgarh, Sandy was talking about. There's a really nice luxury lodge. I don't know if you've heard about the Gull Oya Lodge, but that's one of the lodges that we've collaborated with over the last few years. And beautiful area, right? And I love Galoya's concept because they only employed the local people, and they said, we're gonna basically create this system to employ everybody locally. And lo and behold, like there's huge competition between these lodges now because everybody wants to poach the other lodges, employees. Yeah. And so now.
So it's become a scarce resource. So that's good, right?
Yeah, it's good. And what I like now is that the lodge owners are saying, okay, well, we want to be able to use our business for conservation. How can we protect this swath of land and say, hey, this is a nature ecosystem, a reserve. That's the thing, is that they were very excited when we said we want to establish FishCat Nature Reserve in Sri Lanka. And so now we're working with Tim Edwards. Pretty funny, he's UK based, but he moved to Sri Lanka because he's like, I love Sri Lanka and I want to do business here and I want to support the local economy here and I want to create a conservation system. Of course, he came in from the for-profit angle and I came in from the non-profit angle. And I mean, our team, Destiny was there in Sri Lanka with me and we were talking, and now Destiny is communicating with Tim about setting up FishCat Nature Reserve in Sri Lanka, where we can create a local economy focused on conservation. And then the idea here, Shamima, is if one person starts leading an enriched livelihood because of a nature reserve and says, hey, guess what? If I plant this forest provides me not only with my needed income, but it also provides me with all these exposure to all these people across the planet. It gives me the opportunity, it gives me an enriched livelihood. That person, that family is going to select for conservation and tell 10 other people, or even maybe the influence, like Venkat is a member of the village panchayat. And he just, banned poaching. And the idea is like, he just said, guess what, guys, we need to do conservation. And he was a political leader locally and influenced people into selecting for sustainability and conservation.
And you can financially compete with the offer coming from a fishery company who wants to buy your land for prawn farming.
We have to. There's no choice. We have to. I mean, I have hope with this, because we stole a guy from the corporate world who was working for an IT company and brought him into conservation. And he said, I love this job because I get to be out in nature and I don't have to sit behind a desk and, do whatever it is that the company was doing, because, I didn't see meaning to my life over there. I see meaning to my life here. How do we bring that, right? That is a big sell. Nature is always going to win at the end. And when I was in Sri Lanka, someone gave me a piece of advice. I forget his name, but he said, work with nature, not against it. And that just stuck with me.
Anyway, congratulations. Good job. I'm happy that you are working in our part of the world. Good. Both in Australia, in the Jawbone where I live, and in my former home, both.
I was going to be there, and this was the time, we would have been spending time in person among the mangroves, but hopefully in a year from now.
Fantastic. If you can make it here in a year, Ashwin, we'll certainly try and arrange something like this again, or even maybe a real meeting where people actually come and talk to you and hear about what you're doing down at our local Scout Hall, where we've had a lot of community meetings around Jawbone before. So certainly something to look forward to. Got one last question for you, which has come through the chat from Kate. Is sea level rise having an issue in the areas you're working?
Yeah, and that sea level rise is affecting everybody, right? And this is the coolest part about mangroves. Mangroves adapt to sea level rise, and they'll protect the coastline no matter what. So it's kind of funny. You can actually visualize mangroves like this crab that's moving back and forth, but they're adaptive to sea level rise. And so let's put mangroves wherever there's a problem of sea level rise. It's gonna solve that problem.
Excellent. Unless there's any further questions, just quickly, any last questions before we close the meeting? Nope.
Just a follow up on that. I'm just curious. Are they temperature sensitive, Ashwin? Will they survive changes in the ocean temperature?
Mangroves are extremely resilient from what I've learned. The only thing is the salinity. They kind of need a certain salinity range. So it's like where fresh water meets brackish water, that's where mangroves grow. Because that if it gets too salty, the growth of the mangroves becomes very stunted. And if it's kind of that range, so they will thrive in that. But I'm not sure with temperature. Of course, rising temperatures is a problem worldwide. But mangroves are incredible carbon sinks, and I'm hoping that we could capitalize on the ecosystem service of the carbon sequestration that they provide. I think that's a fantastic opportunity, guys. I'm telling you, mangroves have the maximum bang for your conservation buck. So seriously, find something there that there's a cool opportunity right there. I really think that there's incredibly undervalued ecosystems.
Fantastic. Well, thanks very much for your time, Ashwin. It's been a real pleasure talking to you and hearing about what's happening around mangroves, and especially your passion for actually working with both the mangroves and the community around them, because as we all know that as long as people have economic pressure to make money, then nature comes second always. So it's fantastic to hear what you're doing and to be part of that. And also to Sandy, thanks for actually making the connection for us to Ashwin and bringing this together today, and for your introduction to the session. It's been a real pleasure, and really, really fantastic to hear from you. So we will we recorded the session. We will make it available, I think, through our website, but we can certainly send it out as a link to everyone who's at the meeting today. So you'll hear from us soon. And thanks very much also for your donation to the Cat Conservancy through your fee that you paid today. It's certainly good to be able to collectively for us to support this amazing work.
Yeah, and thank you from me too, Ashwin. It's been fantastic, and we certainly saw the light in you all those years ago. And I look forward to maybe two-way visits in the future sometime. Thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much.
Yeah. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Everybody. Yeah.
Thanks, David and Sandy, for bringing that to us. That was good.
Shamima, do you live in Jawbone somewhere?
Yes, in the range, in the rifle range.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
Closer contact, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Stay in touch. Yeah. Are you a member of you are on our mailing list? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we'll talk more about mangroves later. Yeah.
Yes, they're amazing. They really are. They absorb the heavy metals. They're the nursing ground for so many species. They're just amazing.
And thank you very much, David and Andrea, for organising, running the show behind the scenes, especially
Andrea.
Okay, thank you. Okay, bye everybody.
I'll end the meeting now for everyone. Yeah?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.